Hey, what's going on YouTube? Son of Sanguinius here, and today we're going to be continuing our Blood Angels Tactics videos with a look at the Whirlwind. So the Whirlwind comes in at 65 points. It is Ballista Skill 4, Front and Side Armor 11, and Rear Armor 10 with 3 hull points. For War Gear, it has the Whirlwind Multiple Missile Launcher, a Searchlight, and Smoke Launchers. For options, it may take Overcharge Engines for 10 points, and may take items from the Blood Angels Vehicle Equipment list. Alright, so the Whirlwind, a pretty interesting choice, I would say. It's a fairly cheap, heavy support choice that can provide some good mid to long range support fire. And of course, it can fire indirectly, as both of the I guess shooting profiles that it has both have barrage. So that's also really nice. And speaking of those two profiles, we can sort of dive into them right now. So the first one is the Vengeance. I think it might just be called the Vengeance Missile or something. So the Vengeance is 12 to 48 inches as far as range goes. It is Strength 5, AP 4, Ordnance 1, Barrage, Large Blast. So the Vengeance, I think, is good for, basically Space Marines or anything of that equivalent. Anything that might be, T4 or T3, but, more importantly has either a 4-up armor save or higher. This is because, as far as the other one, which is the Incendiary Castellan, which ignores cover, that really isn't going to matter, as, why would you use something that ignores cover if your opponent has a 3 or 4-up armor save anyway? So the Vengeance, is pretty much good for, 4-up armor or higher, as, your opponent will then be forced to rely on cover saves at that point. The other one, the Incendiary Castellan, which is a really cool name for a rocket barrage, I think is really good for horde type units. So anything with high armor saves, certainly low toughness definitely helps. So things like orc boys, guardsmen, gaunts, cultists, whatever kind of blob type units your opponent might have in their army. The Incendiary Castellan is certainly going to be a nightmare for them. As you can certainly A, ignores cover, B, it's probably going to ignore their armor save if it's 5 or up, and you're basically just going to force your opponent to just keep removing models every turn. And that's pretty good, especially when those kind of horde type units are what's going to be the front line that's going to be there to certainly absorb the barrage of your firepower to keep their elite units alive, and B, those mob type units are probably what's going to be attempting to take objectives on the flanks and in the midfield and in the long field, I guess might be the the term for your deployment zone there. Some other things to keep in mind. Just keep in mind that the Whirlwind only has front armor 11, so it's not going to be as durable as something like the Predicator or the Vindicator or anything like that. So even though you will get a bonus if you have direct line of sight to an enemy unit when you fire, just be sure that when you expose yourself, it's definitely going to be worth it, because as I keep saying with these things, your opponent is not going to waste any time taking out your vehicles if they know that it's going to be something devastating to them. So if you're against an orc player, guardsman player, tyrannid player, chaos player with lots of cultists, be sure that if you do expose your Whirlwind to enemy fire, that whatever risk you're taking is worth the reward. So just be wary of that. Also be wary of the distance that your opponent is. Any enemy unit that is within 12 of the Whirlwind is basically untouchable. So, it may seem kind of, moronic to take a Whirlwind for Blood Angels who are, primarily, a very close, hard-hitting, assaulty type army. But a Whirlwind can provide some nice fire support that can be sorely lacking in a lot of Blood Angel lists. So again, just keep in mind that ideally you probably wouldn't necessarily be moving up your Whirlwind along with the rest of your army. You would most likely be having it in the backfield, providing some, like I said, mid to long range fire support there. So keep in mind, especially if your opponent has something like drop pods, or they have outflank, or if they have other fast-moving units as well, Storm Boys, or any kind of like Raptors, any kind of fast-moving units that can get to your Whirlwind. Make sure that you can either move your Whirlwind out of harm's way, or that you have units around your Whirlwind that can sort of keep the enemy back so that the Whirlwind can continue to lay down some fire without having to be overexposed or put in a position where you either have to move it or lose it, literally. So just keep that in mind. Other than that, you keep it in the backfield. You can thin out objective-taking units, or you can soften them up for the assault. And as I said before, it's fairly cheap for a heavy support choice. So, anyway, that's all my thoughts on the Whirlwind for now. I'm curious to see what you guys have to say down below in the comments. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.